Hey y'all. So today we've got a clash game. We've got Chane versus Dash, and we have seen this matchup before. And here we are. Chane is back for revenge now against this Dash, and I'm really excited about this matchup.
I think you missed the most exciting part there, EthnicSmoke. You're joining me for the broadcast. This is different. We had Uber, we had Chris, we had myself monologuing a ton, but no, now we've got Pankaj, EthnicSmoke. You've got an amazing YouTube channel, and you're in this tournament yourself, piloting Iceland this whole way through. And now you're going to join us to actually cast like the only match you're not in, it seems, because you keep winning everything. But this is the losers bracket finals here. So this is a big deal because we just had another match play out in the losers round here. Zach Bunn versus Mo Bogsley. That was Bravo versus Chane. Chane did come out on top, and now we've got the epic showdown here. Chane versus Dash. We've seen it before. The winner here is going to move on up and actually face against you in the proper finals of the winners bracket. So yes, this will be a big one. It's maybe going to go down the same way as last time. Maybe Dash just out the gates pounding. Maybe Chane racks up the soul shackles and hits big. There's a lot that can still go. I don't think anything's solved in this matchup. So it is going to be a big one. But before we get into it, I want to know more about your thoughts with the Clash format so far, because I've been casting it, but you've been playing it.
Right, so firstly, well, thanks for having me on, of course, yes. And right, so my thoughts on the Clash format, well, I've really been enjoying it. I think, for me, the best part is getting to play with cards that I would never put in my CC deck, right? And or even my Blitz deck, like Glacial Horns, like that's a card I've come to like really, really love. And I'm just like, if it wasn't for this format, I would never be able to like play that. And then by extension, that's like Succumb to Winter. Right, so I get to play like that combo, which is just way too weak for CC or even Blitz, where you get to play like all your Majestics and all your legendary equipment. So that's one. The other challenge which I've really, really liked is what do you do with those Majestic slots, right? Like in Blitz, I want to be running my Insidious Shields, my Channel Leak Fridges, my Hypothermias. These are really, really impactful cards, and like how can I replace them in a way that fits a similar role, or am I just supposed to like pivot and like just think of a completely different role? Like it's been a very interesting deck building challenge. And finally, I want to talk about the sideboard. I just love it as a sideboard in this sort of format. It allows for more varied play styles, right? Like in Blitz, because there's no sideboard, it's like you kind of need to commit your deck to having one game plan. But because you have this 15-20 card sideboard here, you actually can pivot game plans, which is just, it's so exciting that, you could have like a disruptive like Oldhim deck, for example, that can pivot into like a Fatigue Oldhim deck because they're against a Chane. And that sort of dynamic, I think, is really missing from the other lower health format that we have, and I really like it.
Well, yeah, that's a great call out, because that's been the part of Flesh and Blood that really hooked me, and it's the reason that I chase more CC events than I can Blitz, because the adaptability of a sideboard and being able to flex that muscle of just matchup knowledge and knowing how to pivot your deck build along with deck playstyle is just a huge skill expression that you do miss out in Blitz, because switching up equipment is just not the same as even maybe just a couple playsets of cards that are going to change the entire game plan you have in a certain matchup. So I've been loving, especially with Icelander, the adaptability that I've seen in sideboarding, and I don't think today's matchup is going to be that interesting in that case, really. It's two aggro decks versus each other. But you're right, there's a lot of adaptability that could come out of this that I'd love to see in future people who are picking up Clash moving forward, because I think, you're speaking of it now, it's been fun to play, and it's been a better introduction into higher level Flesh and Blood, because you're an amazing competitive player, and even you have seen more at the vanilla level, like the beauty of the smaller intricacies of this format. So appreciate you in plugging it, right? That's the whole idea, is newer players pick up this format, find those little like illuminary moments of fun and intricacy that just Blitz and Commoner don't have, that might lead you all the way to CC. And then you'll be playing with the big dogs. You'll be calling top eights with EthnicSmoke over here, and that'll just make your day.
That's another thing that it really brings about what the best thing about Flesh and Blood is the back and forth, the like trying to squeeze out value from like lower power cards, and it's great.
It is still a low health format, so the back and forth is not likely going to last, like 10 turns, right? You normally you're seeing like 4 or 5 turn games, which I think might scare off some people, but there are going to be different play styles that aren't fully explored in this kind of tournament bracket. We haven't seen like true fatigue decks, not even that many mid-range decks come up. I think everyone was so excited to play aggressive. Even how you've been playing Icelander has been incredibly aggressive. But hey, speaking of the aggression, today's matchup is just that. Dash versus Chane, and I'm more than happy to welcome you in the casting booth with me for us to jump into this match. Alrighty, look what we've got today. It is Dash versus Chane, a matchup that we saw just a few weeks ago over in the winners bracket, but both players have taken a bit of a knockdown. They are now playing in the losers bracket final. That's nothing against how good these decks were. They've both only effectively taken one loss, right? Like Dash, Wilson on the left here, only lost to you, EthnicSmoke, in that last semifinals round. And then Mark Johnson lost pretty early, but he's been winning all the way through the lose bracket to be here. So these are both really, really strong decks, and now they're matching up again against each other. But what can you really tell us about the Dash deck having played against it?
So the first thing I noticed was that it likes to cheat resources. So Hyperdriver, obviously a card that says when you boost, you gain a resource. Cards like Jumpstart, which cost one less if they have a Hyperdriver in play. So these things, that's like how the Dash is trying to cheat the resource curve of the game, if you will. And on the other side, we have Chane, notorious for cheating a resource system of the game, obviously by just drawing extra cards effectively from that Soul Shackle effect.
Yes, and that's exactly what he's kicked off here right now. Mark Johnson, he has won the die roll and elected to go first, which when you're actually under so much pressure against an opponent like Dash, being able to go first and just start setting up your Soul Shackles is really important. You want more Soul Shackles to hit more potential banish playable cards off the top of your deck each turn. So it's not that much of an attack turn 0 here, just a little, one Arcane Ping and a Bounding Demigod coming out of the right side. But it's really all about the Soul Shackle creation, and if he can leak in more arcane damage, abusing the fact that there's only one arcane barrier on the Dash side here, then hey, that's what Rosetta's there for. And that's what's happening right now. Just a little bit of that arcane leak.
For sure. The other thing about the Chane going first is that the damage sort of graph for Chane, like it gets a lot higher later on the more Soul Shackles they have. But until then, I would say the Dash actually has a more effective damage turn. Because their damage is a little more linear, but they get to use all their cards, and Chane really needs like more cards in their banish zone before they get to like match what the Dash does. So another reason why the Chane elected to go first.
Yep, and that's exactly what we're going to see when stuff like Hyperdriver starts to refund those resources. That's the immediate board state value that Dash brings that Chane builds into, and that's coming up right here with that red 0 to 60 coming in for 4, and then immediately refunding a resource from Hyperdriver. So a 0 for 4 also netted one additional resource out of that. That feels really good when you're going as aggressive as you can from a going second type of position, right? You're the first person to start threatening real decisions of life or cards. But Mark Johnson defends that 4 with a beautiful defense reaction of 4 on that favor scene right there.
Definitely, and Chane is definitely very happy to see that, especially early on. Early on is when the Chane wants to see these defense reactions. Later on, when they've built a few more Soul Shackles, that's when they want to not see those defense reactions and instead see blues to play their cards from banish, or attacks, or cards that give go again so they get to play even more attack from the banish zone.
Yep, and we continue the onslaught with another what would be base 4. However, pumped by that rotary ram up to 7 now, so there's not a singular card coming from the Chane that's going to really cleanly block this. And the hit effect on a high-speed impact is honestly probably not too relevant to really worry about full blocking anyway. It's just going to give the next Mechanologist attack dominate if the high-speed impact hits. And as of now, if you're tracking what's on the left side here, the only attack Wes could have left is that Technoplasma pistol. There we go. But Mark, surprising me here a little bit, he does full block that 7.
So Chane electing to, as we've been talking about, right? Chane wants to start the game by setting up with Shackles, and later on is when they want to have the life buffer to take the damage that Dash is doing to send back even more. So so Mo choosing to do that, I think, makes a lot of sense. And they actually hit on their Shackle here, which is very, very interesting. I wonder how much they were actually expecting to hit there. And that's one of those things that potentially might actually throw off their plan, because typically on the first Shackle you don't expect to hit something, but if you don't use it, then you take blood debt damage. So we might see a Chane be in a bit of a predicament here.
Yeah, it's a bit of adaptability that the Chane player needs to be ready for, right? Because the banishes are random. You don't know what's going to happen until the start of your turn, which is it's different how normal Flesh and Blood decks play. You're normally playing with full information on what your turn will look like when you're even making blocking decisions. But Chane doesn't have that info. He's not quite sure where his attacks are going to be coming from, like what the amount of damage he can throw looks like. So what we're seeing for Mo here now is maybe a bit of a forced line. He's going to go ahead and just make this Bounding Demigod from Arsenal come in for 3, and then pitch a red Ghostly to follow in with that Ghostly Visit for Banish for 4. So he turned an Arsenal card plus a card in hand into a 7 damage turn. So 2 cards for 7. That, in a way, is good. He also avoided taking a Blood Debt for it. So it was a bit of a win for him, especially since he pushed the damage he did against the dash there. He wants to trickle that life down so that even stuff like Rosetta starts to threaten lethal.
Yeah, definitely. One thing though, the Chane did have to give up their arsenal there, and I'm not sure how much more actually like wanted to do that, or whether it was just forced because they banished a Blood Debt card and they didn't want to take Blood Debt, so they're like, okay, I'm gonna need to give up an arsenal here to actually play it out. On the other side, we see Dash come in with an 8 damage throttle buffed by that Goliath Gauntlet, and of course they boosted and they hit because their deck is full of Mechanologist cards, not a single non-mech card in there, so 100% boost rate.
Yeah, it comes in for 8, which is, that's just, I mean, it's basically 50% of Mark's HP here, because in this format, there is no husk to really say, oh yes, I just buy you 6 life. That's what you gain for being a shadow deck. In this position, Mark looks at his hand, he realizes, not really a clean block on this. We'll just take the 8, and all of a sudden, dropping down to 10. Followed up here by a zipper hit that was paid for with the extra Hyperdriver resource to threaten another 4. It's not looking to be lethal presented this turn, so Mark's just going to keep on taking that tick of damage to see how much he can present in turn. And this is actually quite a good pivot for him, because the end of this was not an attack. It was a bit of a slow setup, a tech low core.
And that's what makes Dash honestly very difficult to block. A lot of times you're holding your cards, you're trying to see how much more damage they're going to present, and then suddenly they're like, oops, nope, no more damage, I'm going to play this item instead. And you're like, oh no, I actually wanted to block like a little, I just want to block later on in the chain.
Yep, and this is a banish that I think, as a chain player, you got to feel a little bit unlucky when you see your Soul Reaping go like that. It just bye-byes all the way to the banish zone, but at the same time, a red Bounding Demigod was hit. So out of 3 banishes so far, that's 2 hits for Mark's side. He's got to feel pretty good about that, because those are rates you don't really expect until about Shackle 4 or so to really even out your odds of hitting. So this is a lot of early advantage gained by Mark, just having these extra cards playable from the Banish Zone. It's a bit like free intellect, right? It's an entire extra hand you get to play out of. And a red bounding is no joke. That normally is a 0 for 4. So you see Mark being a little bit pensive. This is information he didn't really know he'd be playing around this turn, as we talked about last turn cycle. And he's going to be committing a little bit more to this turn by an Ebb and Fold cracked here to go ahead, banish another yellow bounding, draw a card, and just see where the turn takes him.
Yeah, Ebb and Fold basically drawing an extra, paying 1 to draw a card, because the card in Banish, the Chane can just play anyway, and then they get to draw a card from Ebb and Fold. So I think Chane might be feeling a bit pressured to do this right now, because they are at 6 and the opponent has a Techlocore in play, so free resources, meaning the Dash can come in and deal damage to the Chane on the next turn without pitching too much. Which means that once the Chane starts banishing more and more, they might actually lose to Blood Debt if they're forced to block with cards from hand. So it feels like the Chane is being a little pressured to do this, to force the Dash to block a little, so that they cannot come back with more, so that the Chane doesn't die to Blood Debt eventually.
And this is a strong start if you're trying to push that aggressive gas pedal, right? A Bounding Demigod gaining that +1 from the Banish Zone play effect, because a non-attack has been played in that blue Plunder Run, and a Stubby Hammers buff to bring it up to 5 here, threatening an on-hit draw effect coming from that blue Plunder Run. That was played from hand, not from Arsenal, so there's no additional +1 in the air, but it's still threatening enough here that Wes says, I'm going to give you 2 cards, 6 block on your 5 attack. But the danger there is Wes can see, and Mark definitely knows, there's a yellow Bounding Demigod that can also get thrown off the back of this, and with other enablers on the board like Snapdragons to push this even wider, this Plunder Run draw effect is probably going through no matter what Wes wants to do.
For sure. And here we see something about Chane, actually, where Chane might have a lot of cards, but sometimes they get limited on action points. So we're probably going to see the snaps being used here, but also take note that based on their blocking decisions and the fact that they use Ebb and Fold here, I wouldn't be surprised to see another Go Against Source in the Chane's hand that they're just hiding for now.
And there is the question mark draw here as well. It's something that, you're not really sure how to plan around. Is it another attack? Is it a pitch card? Is it going to be maybe another Gogan enabler? Mark is a very capable player, though, and he will play to the line that is correct. I have no doubt with this new information that he got off that draw here. And it looks like a red meet and greet coming out next. Now, this one doesn't have Go again because no Arcane's been dealt, actually. Funny enough, it is a Rune Blade on the right side here, but a Rune Blade that hasn't dealt Arcane damage. A bit odd.
Yep.
Where was the Rosetta swing? Hasn't happened yet.
Yep, and a lot of times, like, in a different format, you would see them use their Grasp of the Arcanite to, get a Rune Chant. Oh, but here we see the Razor Reflex. Like I said, I was fully expecting another source of Go again in the Chane's hand because they had those extra cards and, they were going to draw more. So very, very, very good play by Mo here.
Wow, that's incredible. There's no way to understate that. A Razor Reflex was the Gogan. Did he have it in hand? Was it what was drawn off the snaps or off the plunder run? You never quite know. But what it did do was push Wes all the way down to 1 this turn. And that's not even committing another additional push piece in the Aether Ironweave. He didn't even have to use that equipment piece here. So it wasn't even a full committal of resources to push Wes down to 1, which of course is always going to be lethal when a Rosetta Swing deals 2 arcane damage to an opponent that has just 1 arcane barrier.
And that's a very good point, bringing up the Aether Ironweave, because I believe what the Chane drew was the blue. I believe the Razor Reflex was probably already in hand, in which case they didn't actually need the draw effect because they could have just popped the Ironweave, but they wait until they actually drew before they actually make the decision to pop that or not. So another instance of a very good play by the Chane player here.
Oh yeah, you would expect nothing less of Mark. He's a fantastic player, and he pivots around those normally harder to play heroes. He's a Prism player, Kano player, Chane player in Clash apparently, and he's just an absolute powerhouse as he continues on, hitting another Banish. So that's blue Unhallowed Rites, not the most threatening card at this point in the game, normally for longer play patterns. But look, Wes is at 1. There isn't much more that Mark has to do other than either activate a Rosetta or deal 2 arcane damage in some other capacity, go with some breakpoint. It's all looking bad for Wes. Let's be clear.
For sure. And Wes must be feeling really bad that they got to set up a Teklo car, but basically didn't get to use much value out of it. All they did was swing the pistol for 2, which is not what you want to be doing with that card.
This is a bit of a slow acceptance of lethal here. There's a blue Vexing Malice coming in. That's just 1 measly armor block needed to block that part of the attack, but it's also throwing 2 arcane. And what do you do about 2 arcane when you have 1 arcane barrier? You slowly realize, let me pitch that resource real quick, but you still die. So I think the players are just taking note of that. There you go. He taps it. Hey, buddy, that's 2 arcane, and boom, Wes goes to 0. Dash taken down by Chane, even though Dash took down the Chane in that first playthrough in the winner's bracket. What a flip of events.
Definitely. Chane definitely came back swinging in full force, came back for his revenge, and he did get it.
And real congrats to both players. This has been a lot of fun to see them both continue to play these decks all the way through Clash here. So Mark is now moving on to the winner's bracket finals. He's getting his redemption, and he's going to be playing against you on Icelander, and y'all didn't actually get to play earlier in the winner's bracket. He was knocked down by Wes, who you later faced. How are you feeling facing into this Chane you've never seen before?
Well, honestly, first, I'm feeling very excited. It's really cool I get to play against a different hero, so I get to experience all the different heroes in Clash. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't have minded facing Dash again, but it's just interesting to face a different hero. Also, Chane is tough, right? The most important piece that Icelander has against Chane would be hypothermia, like in Blitz, but in Clash, we don't have access to that. So just giving them 1 Frostbite typically is not going to be enough because Chane does run a lot of blues. And their cards they just get to draw free cards. And Icelander hates when the opponent gets to draw cards. So it's going to be a tough one. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, we will find out what happens tomorrow for the finale of this entire Clash Bash event. You and Mark will be playing for your honorary League of Levias sleeves, which should be in my hand right now, but they're a little too far away to grab. That's the grand prize, folks. That and pride, right? So you've got a lot on the line for your game tomorrow, EthnicSmoke. I just wanted to say thanks for joining me in this and the entire run overall. It's been great to have other content creators help out. Really cool that we finally get to cast something together. I haven't done this yet, but I think you all might need to pay attention to upcoming Battle Hardened or something like that, because it may be 2 of us casting. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see at Battle Hardened New Jersey, but a lot to look forward to regardless, and especially your game tomorrow. So thanks for joining me.
For sure, and thank you for having me.